Hey everybody, this is Vlad Blagovic speaking, and welcome back to the Full Funnel B2B Marketing Podcast. And today's guest is Lieven Bertier, who is the Segment Marketing Director at Barco. And this is one of the largest B2B tech companies in the Benelux region. And I'm super excited to have him here. We have a lot of nice topics prepared. So Lieven, welcome.
Thank you very much, Vlad, and a pleasure to be here today.
Awesome. Let's dive in, I would say. So I'd like to start with this because we had this discussion and I really like this. It's, I think, a very good lesson for everybody. What is the main KPI of your marketing team at Barco?
Yeah, so you're diving in straight away, but happy to see this happen. Main KPI for us in marketing is MQLs, marketing qualified leads. This is what we consider, I would almost say, as our North Star, because this is the one guiding metric. And the reason why we chose for this metric is also because we are a matrix organization, and that means we have a number of different teams involved in marketing, but having this kind of North Star, this kind of, I would almost say, unifying purpose really helps, because we know this is what we're working towards.
Now, a lot of people have different companies have different definition of MQL. There is a lot of buzz around on the internet about why, going after MQLs is bad, but I know your definition of MQL is very different than a lot of people might consider.
Yeah, it's indeed a pretty stringent definition. So for us, for a lead to become a marketing qualified lead, that means that our inside sales teams have qualified the lead. They have spoken with the prospect in question, and they qualify based on what is called the band criteria. So that means, does the prospect have the budget? Does he have the authority to make a decision? Is there a clearly identified need? And is there also a timeline going along with it? So that means the moment we forward the MQL, let's say, further into the organization, that can be our in-house sales teams. If it is for bigger accounts, then we have our own business development team working on that. If it is other leads, they go to our partner network, our connect partners, as we typically call them. But long story short, the quality of these leads is extremely high, and like 99+% really get accepted by the sales teams.
Okay, so there's a big difference, I think, than what people normally perceive by. So it's almost a sales qualified lead that is the North metric. Now, did you ever had some pushback from people in marketing, making them responsible for a KPI where, partly, I mean, obviously it's a big responsibility, like they have a lot of impact, but it's maybe not completely in their control?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always, I would say, some pushback on this, and pushback is too strong a word. I would say this is about challenging one another, and ultimately we always come to a handshake whereby we agree this is what we go for. But yeah, I mean, you have a certain budget available as a marketeer. There is a certain KPI, most often defined as MQLs, that goes against this. And so it's normal for people to negotiate this, to talk this through. At the same time, I must say there is not a single marketeer in Barco contesting the fact that we are shooting for MQLs. So that metric is really well accepted. The only number or the only thing we actually have some debate about is what is going to be the target. Now, the way we typically do this, Vlad, is actually we have a certain revenue target that we set forward at the beginning of the year, and then a percentage of that revenue is what we call marketing sourced. So that means that typically that is between 12 and 15% of revenues for ClickShare. 12 to 15% of the revenues are marketing sourced. So we have this whole backward calculation if there is a certain revenue target to be met, and if 15% of that revenue needs to be coming from a marketing touch point, and we know the average deal size, and we know all the different conversion stages, you can do a backwards calculation, and then you end up with a number of MQLs to shoot for.
So in a way, it's you might argue that your target is qualified pipeline. I mean, almost, let's say, to the 99th percentile, as you explained. Yeah,
it's contribution to a qualified pipeline. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, if I think about it, what makes, like you said, like these leads are accepted by the sales team, and you have very good results from those in terms of later conversion and win rates. So I'm sure that marketing doesn't stop when the lead is created. You mentioned that you're also, one of the responsibilities is sales enablement. How does that look like at Barco, a sales enablement program?
Yeah, well, sales enablement is a big word, of course. What is very important to us is we have an indirect go-to-market. So when we talk about ClickShare, and that is my area. So within Barco, I'm responsible for ClickShare strategic marketing or segment marketing. But we always have this two-tier model. That means there is a distributor in between, and there's a reseller or an integrator in between before we reach into the customer. So that means there's a network of 5,000 plus resellers globally. Now, the challenge for us is, of course, we have this network, so we need to make sure that all these partner sales are actually up to speed, up to date with the product. So that is a first priority of the sales enablement program. And next to that, as I already mentioned, if it is the bigger accounts, the Fortune 1000s, we typically call them, we have our own business developers working on them. Also there, it's very important to make sure that everybody has all the assets available. That is what sales enablement is all about for us. And the way we look at this is we typically see three dimensions in this program. First of all, it's about creation. It's making sure those salespeople have the right assets available. Next to that, it's also about communicating them, because you can build the best possible set of assets if nobody knows where to find them. If these assets don't get pushed to people, that might break. So the next thing is, let's make sure people know they are available, know where to find them. And then, of course, this is a never-ending story. And I make it sound negative. It's actually very positive, because you got to close the loop and you got to keep on going. That's why, to me, evaluate is the third pillar of the program. It means which assets are actually getting used, which are the assets that are liked by our salespeople, which ones are they spontaneously using. And then it's about keeping them up to date, revamping where and when needed, and of course, also making sure that we embrace new things, because originally there was a lot of playbooks, there was a lot of presentations and so on. But you can imagine going forward that this is more and more about making sure we have videos available and other kinds of assets.
Okay, so that makes sense. Of course, like you have to create the assets and you have to make sure that they're actually used. Now, you mentioned communicate, and I just wonder, because like you mentioned as well, in the evaluation, you will figure out some assets have been used more than the others. And is there some sort of also co-creation, or, just creating and sharing definitely must be there. But I was just wondering, like, how do you make sure that you're creating the right asset is what I'm actually trying to get at.
Our number one rule is really, let's make sure we talk to the people who are using the assets. So making sure we understand their needs and their requirements. And then, of course, in our job, we are operating very closely to all the customers and the partners. So we are getting a lot of direct inputs as well. Product management is a team we interact with frequently. So we are also getting a lot of inputs from their sides. We have customer councils running at Barco. So there's, long story short, plenty of touch points where we get in touch with customers, where we get in touch with partners. And most important of all, we involve the salespeople themselves, because it's their toolkit, it's their asset kit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. And let me know if you can, of course, looking at the different programs and driving the MQLs as you define them very strictly, what has been most successful at your team? Or, well, I mean, at your team, I mean, at ClickShare globally.
Lots of things are very successful. So I gotta say, today, roughly 60% of our leads come in via organic. 32 to 40% come in via paid, like Google AdWords and so on. But within this whole, I would almost say, kit of advertising or lead generation weapons we have, there's one that stands out to me. That is we call it try and buy. It's actually a free trial program. So I will refer to it as a trial program. But that is one that is hugely successful because we see when we get people to try out the product, 1 out of 2 people actually buy. So this is 50% conversion. So that means if we get somebody into trying the product, we know we have a very good chance of winning.
Now, let me just, because again, for the listeners, trying out, having a free trial, people think, I go on a website, I create a free account, it's software, etc. But I think with you, it's not just the software free account that I get, right?
No, it's a piece. I mean, it's a piece of hardware we are selling. So ClickShare is a package. It includes what we call a base unit, the receiver, and also the ClickShare buttons. And then the intangible part is the ClickShare app that you're getting as part of the package. But this means indeed we have a third party taking care of all the shipments and the deliveries. So that means you are actually getting a box, it gets shipped to you along with instructions on how to set it up. There is a sort of a hotline, helpline available that can assist you if need be. And you can keep the unit 2 to 4 weeks. So you can really set it up in your meeting rooms, you can try it out. And after that period, you ship it back. The unit gets checked, of course, and not in terms of is it broken or so, but we just make sure that we reset all the software. We make sure that it is all back to factory settings again, and then it's ready for shipment to a next customer.
All right. So this is quite unique, I think, offering hardware for a free trial, and it comes with a cost, I'm sure. And so I was wondering, yeah, obviously you have these high conversion rates, but how do you decide, everybody gets a free trial? Can I just go there and get it? Or do you have some sort of qualification? At which stage do you send? How does that work?
In theory, anybody can sign up for a free trial. Of course, going back to what I said in the beginning, you're going to get qualified first, Vlad. So do you have the budget? Do you have the need? And most important of all, do you have the authority to buy?
So it's actually the inside sales that will offer the free trial, or the partner.
Yeah, so it can get offered through inside sales, through one of our sales reps, through a partner. If you sign up yourself, you're early in the funnel again, so we're going to qualify you first.
Okay, that makes sense. And where do you get the most demand for the try and buy program? Is it inbound, outbound? Where does it come from mostly?
I would say it's mixed. So we are seeing, primarily it is coming in via our website. That is the number one thing, and then related to that, all the other touch points.
And it's a really amazing conversion rate. And I know that a lot of companies are struggling with free trials in terms of onboarding, in terms of people who are trying out, having that happy experience, experiencing the value of the product. So are there some things that you do to make sure that, they don't just get a package, leave it on the table because it's free, right? But that they will actually test it and actually see the value very quickly.
Yeah, so as I said, we have an onboarding flow, so you can get support there if you want to. And of course, after the trial, we are also in touch with you to check how it was, how you experienced the trial, and so on. So by following up rather closely, and also again, I'm repeating myself here, but the better qualified the lead or the opportunity you're talking about, I mean, you're further in the funnel already, and the likelihood that people will just leave the bag there is very unlikely, to be honest. That being said, in COVID times, with people not being in the office, this was at moments a challenge. On the other hand, we started to realize that for many people, they were very happy to set this up in their home environment as well. And especially as companies started preparing for the return to office, the decision makers were already running tests in their home setups, or they went back into the office 1 or 2 days a week. But there was a moment where this program was a bit slower than we're used to.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, let's maybe just shift gears. We talked about the more the trials and the programs that work. And I wanted to talk to you about more strategic parts of marketing, which I know it's a big part of your responsibility. And I wanted to talk to you about product positioning. I know this is one of the responsibilities that you have at ClickShare. And I was thinking, well, no, my experience has been that, you know, a lot of people kind of misunderstand what this means. And it's actually, I think, a very powerful tool for marketers, but a lot of people don't understand it. So I just wanted to ask you, imagine, you know, being a CMO, joining as a CMO of a B2B tech company. And, you know, the first thing you would probably do, one of the first things is evaluate their positioning in the market. How would you evaluate it? And what would be some signs of weak positioning?
I think you're after the Holy Grail here today. uh, I think first of all, and if you know me a little bit, I'm very much about common sense. So it doesn't always have to be very expensive, or it doesn't always have to be very complex. I'm rather down to earth, and that's where I bring in the notion of common sense. But to me, if you ask me about positioning, I mean, it all starts with questions like, hey, who are your or who is your audience? Who are you going to focus on? Which are the segments you can identify? And segmentation is so easy because segmentation needs to be actionable. So that means if you start splitting up groups of buyers or use cases and so on, make sure it's actionable, make sure it's measurable. Otherwise, it makes no sense to do this. Then another question typically I would ask is, hey, what makes you unique? What are the differentiators you are bringing to the conversation? What is your competition doing? Always take a look at competition, and very important, decide where you want to be different versus competition. Because at moments it's good to break the conventions of an industry or break the conventions of a category to make sure you stand out. So you cannot do this without looking at competition. And I would say never ever forget your go-to-market as well, because the way you're going to reach into customers is also very important towards your positioning. And there's plenty of examples of products that got launched and ultimately that failed, even though the product was fantastic, the experience was fantastic, the look and feel, it was all there. But if you don't factor in your go-to-market and the role your channel is going to play, you could well miss out. And again, this is not like the big bulky checklist, but it's just it's a very logical thing. How big is my market? Who is my audience? How can I reach them through my GTM? So ask yourself all of these questions, try to map it out. And one of the tools I like really using here is the business model canvas. That's a classic, of course. I'm not gonna how do you say this? I'm not going to bring any major disruption here, but it's a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. So I love using it. And next to that, there's of course the value prop canvas as the other classic. So if you have those two, I think you have a very strong start.
And okay, so you have your position, you have your strategy, and now you're starting to, you know, go to market, you're starting your first sales, etc. How do you know whether the positioning that you have chosen for your product is actually working, if the decision was right?
I think it needs to be translated into set of, is it metrics, KPIs, whatsoever. But so you need to have something in mind. This is what I want to achieve. And imagine your objective is to sign up 1,000 new customers. Then of course you need to check whether this positioning is resonating with them. That is one of the things to do there. But to me, it's really like, okay, what do we want to achieve? And then you see whether or not this works. What we did with ClickShare, and looking back a bit here, I mean, ClickShare, we started off roughly 10 years ago when we first when we commercialized the first product. So we were an internal startup in Barco and growing to where we are today. But if I look back on this journey, I mean, we originally positioned it as a Barco product because we were new. There was no brand value attached to the ClickShare name. So we needed the strength of the Barco brand going in for positioning. Then 2-3 years into the ClickShare life, I would say, we came at a moment that we wanted to scale. So we had a solid customer base already, but it was about scaling. And so then we actually redid the whole positioning, because we decided at that moment to sort of downplay, and again, it's not the right word, but what I mean with it is really identify the core value, the core element of ClickShare. And we said, hey, we are the cable killer. So you're used to having a VGA or an HDMI cable. We're going to cut the cable. That is who we are. Well, it did wonders for us, because all of a sudden everybody knew, hey, here's ClickShare, here's the cable killer. Then fast forward, you're a few years in, and then you start realizing, this cable killer thing, it may not do 100% justice to a product that's become, in the meantime, a fully networked product that is targeted primarily at IT managers. So you sort of start redoing your positioning. And to end my rant here, when COVID came, all of a sudden, the world turned hybrid. And luckily, we had just introduced a new flavor, I would almost say, of ClickShare. The original ClickShare got complemented with a ClickShare conference, as we call it, which is like a box, an open room system that takes away all the frictions linked to hybrid video conferencing in a meeting room. So we had just launched that one. And it also meant, because of COVID, our positioning now is today all about, we're going to make for better hybrid meetings. That is the value we are bringing with ClickShare. So long story short, you need to look where you are in your journey as a product or as a portfolio to decide on the positioning. But there's also external factors like COVID that can have an influence, because all of a sudden we were like 2-3 years propelled ahead in time with all of us into conferencing.
No, I love the story. Totally not a rant. You actually answered the next question. Like, wanted to ask about reviewing your positioning, because it's not like you say, things change, the product evolves, the market evolves, the customers' needs evolve. So is this something you do regularly? Is it something you do based on the market feedback? Like, how do you decide when to do the review?
It's not that we have this process that we need to review positioning every 18 months or so. That is not how it goes. It's about picking up the signals, and at moments this can be feedback from customers. At moments this can be things that you see happening in market, can be things happening in the world. But what I mean, being around for some time with ClickShare and being around some time into marketing. There is not one single moment typically that leads to us questioning the positioning of a product, but there's a number of elements that come together, and you start picking this up, because very often it's going to be, a product manager is going to pick up certain signals. You're going to get certain signals from sales teams, going to get signals from customers, and all of a sudden you start to realize, hey, things are changing. Maybe we got to take a step back here and reflect whether we are still actual. And that is how we do it. I'm sorry, I wish there was rocket science behind, but it's just very simple, plain, but what I would call pragmatic marketing. And just a little side note here, all of us at Barco, we are certified in pragmatic marketing. That's one of the things we did a few years ago when we laid down our marketing blueprint.
I love it. And you mentioned that it's very important to consider your go-to-market when you're creating your position or updating it. And this is something that I found interesting in our earlier conversation. Maybe not something that people will immediately associate with the hardware product. And I know that part of your marketing mix is also thought leadership. How does it look like for ClickShare?
Well, you're touching into one of my personal favorites here, and that is indeed thought leadership. So for us at Barco, I think we first talked about the future of the meeting. I think it was back in 2013 or back in 2014. So it's a topic that was always close at heart. But what we realized is when you start building awareness, let's say, for a product, the importance of thought leadership cannot be underestimated. What we typically do today is we have 2 or 3 waves of research we do, and then we start publishing about that. And so, for instance, one of the things we introduced is the meeting barometer. What is the meeting barometer? I call it the NPS score for the meetings. It's the same calculation, and the question is very straightforward. Did meetings get better for you over the last 6 months, yes or no? Here's the thing, Vlad. We had a score of plus 63 back in 2019. It dropped to top of mind plus 17 last year, if I'm not mistaken. This year, it went down to minus 25. And little scoop here, we're going to publish new research 2 weeks from now, and it's dropping further to minus 38. So that means amidst this whole pandemic, people are starting to question meetings. And people are totally unsatisfied with them. And I mean, I'm sure you heard about Zoom fatigue and all that kind of stuff, but it's a reality. We're picking it up as well.
And here we are.
And here we are. But that then feeds back again into the marketing activities we are doing, because we were talking sales enablement. This is a potential conversation starter, of course, with customers. Also for us, it's one of the ways to sort of get into the news, I would almost say literally, because it's an opportunity for us to get free exposure in press when we start talking about all of this. So that is the whole point. We are looking for conversation starters that can be used in public relations, sales enablement, marketing campaigns, and so on. And we have, I mean, we've been quite successful here in terms of generating awareness based on all of this.
And what would you say are the main results of this program? And I know you're going to measure them differently. It's not so much necessarily directly about MQLs, or how do you measure it, and what was the results?
But first of all, there's the PR value that is associated with it. So the reach you typically have through all of this. So I had one of my colleagues in France joining a TV show and talking through the results. My French was too lousy. I myself, I joined on Sky News on a Sunday morning when we were talking about the meeting barometer and what's going wrong with meetings. So first of all, there's the PR, there's the exposure. Second thing, not to be underestimated, is the impact this has on your SEO or the fuel it's given to your content marketing activities. Rather hard to measure, but I mean, we have the number of downloads of the report, we have the people visiting the pages and so on. So that is also a key element here. And then, I mean, I'm happy to join your show today. We do our own shows once in a while as well. We call them webinars. But this is, of course, also good fuel for webinars, and we are reaching quite some people with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And in terms of, okay, so you're getting the PR, so the people who are in the media will have to get some awareness of this, and obviously also your customers. So what did you find for such a piece, such a thought leadership piece, you know, research result? What are some of the best working distribution strategies?
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to ask what is the one and only tactic to use. But as we know, there is not one tool that does the whole job. No, to me, in my experience, it's a mix of push and pull. And when I say push, I mean we have our own newsletter subscribers, we have customer bases, we have our partner bases, and so on. So let's make sure we push this message to the people who would like to receive it. Of course, all of that GDPR proof. And then at the same time, I mean, when we talk about content marketing, when we talk about PR and so on, it's also about making sure there is a certain pull there by making sure all the information is to be found there. And we offer the reports then via the website. So the trigger is always we try to bring people to our website where they can download the reports. And that is, of course, for us an easy way, I would say, to measure the success.
All right. And just a practical question in terms of this research, is this something you do in-house or do you work with somebody, with a, let's say, the vendor provider of those services? And I was also wondering, like, about the audience. Are you buying the audience, or are you also involving some of maybe prospects, customers in the research?
We always buy the audience, which sounds which sounds really bad to me. The reason why we are buying panels, but we are using industry panels. And why is this important? Because first of all, we want to get the voice of the user. So we want to make sure that we don't have, I mean, sometimes we match the voice of the user against the voice of the decision maker. But when we look at our databases in Barco, it's primarily decision makers and so on, which is a very important group of people, but which might lead to a bias. And we are really after the voice of the user, people joining meetings day in, day out. How are they feeling? What are they experiencing? So that is the number one reason for us to turn to panels. And of course, with a panel, you can control and you can make sure you have different generations, different industries, different genders, all that kind of stuff. So you can make sure that you can start looking for patterns between, for instance, millennials versus Gen Z, which is often a very cool thing to do. So that is the reason why we go primarily with panels. How are we running the research? It's always a mix of in-house and external. So we often involve research agencies, or PR agencies, or lead advertising agency. They are typically involved with it, but at the same time, we make sure that we sort of are in control of the questionnaire. And what do I mean with it? It's about making sure we have all the questions in there we think are relevant. And believe it or not, we often start by writing the press release before we start drafting the questionnaire. So we are looking for a number of conversation starters. We sort of make them up. They can be confirmed, or they can be how do you say this?
Invalidated, maybe.
Invalidated, thank you, through the research. But at least we have a number of going in principles, like what could be happening, what would be happening.
No, but I think this makes a lot of sense. Both that, like you say, you want to control the story, of course, because that story, you use it to impact your, of course, PR, marketing, and sales. So I like it basically starting with the end in mind when you're creating that research, and that's how you're designing the questions as well. Yeah, and I think. Go ahead, please.
It's by definition not a self-fulfilling prophecy. So very often we have to start all over again, but at least you have, I mean, it's sort of your briefing towards all the people involved.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, like you said, it sounds terrible buying the audience, but no, I think it's definitely a good idea. Obviously, like you say, this is not directly your audience, it's the audience of your audience in a way, right? Of the decision, their employees and their colleagues. And I think it also just makes the whole result much more credible, neutral. You know, you have, like you say, a good representation, you can control exactly the demographics, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and makes actually, I think, also execution so much easier, getting those responses quicker in a structured way, etc. So makes a lot of sense too. Look, Lieven, I mean, I know there's so much we could talk about. There is you know, we could go on, but just in the interest of time, maybe we can wrap it up by just if you could share, you know, with the listeners where they can find you, where they can find more about your work, and maybe about working at the Barco's marketing team.
Yeah, so first of all, if you are looking for more information on Barco, it's very easy, barco.com. If you want more on ClickShare, it's barco.com/ClickShare. If you want to get in touch with me, just go on LinkedIn, Lieven Bertier. You will also find me on Twitter if you want. So happy to connect, happy to engage in conversation. And yeah, I mean, it's from my point of view, it's been a fun ride with Barco in terms of helping grow marketing for ClickShare. So if there are people who are interested in joining this journey, I mean, always welcome on barco.com, or get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lieven. This was very, very nice. Thank you.
My pleasure.